Out of all the unique units in the game, none is more ubiquitous with Warhammer 40K than the Dreadnought. And in today's deep dive, I wanted to take a look at the different patterns of Dreadnoughts that are just absolutely amazing and you won't see on the battlefield anymore because they have gone to legend. Starting off with the Contemptor pattern Dreadnought. We all know that when a Space Marine is in a near-death state or can somehow be revived after a battle, their bodies are placed inside of a cybernetic sarcophagus called a Dreadnought. These Dreadnoughts are armed with the Imperium's deadliest weapons so that the Battle Brothers entombed inside can continue to serve humanity even in their death. However, the design of the modern-day Dreadnought is not the first or even the best Dreadnought pattern in existence. One of the most powerful Dreadnoughts is the Contemptor pattern Dreadnought. This ancient relic predates the Imperium of Man and was a powerful weapon used during the Unification War, when the Emperor of Mankind still walked amongst humanity. Evidence of their ancient origins exists in the form of Sacred Chapter Memento Mori and other Imperial monuments raised long ago on worlds such as Necromunda and Loran Alpha. This suggests that the Contemptor pattern Dreadnought played an integral part in the earliest Astartes forces raised on Terra for the Great Crusade. The Contemptor pattern, much like the technology developed at the dawn of the Imperium of Man, is larger and more powerful than its standard pattern counterparts of today's time. It featured many technological systems that were found in the combat robots of the ancient legal cybernetica, including such fabled techno-arcana as automatic field generator technology that would later be refined and incorporated into the storm shields used by the Astartes warriors. What made the Contemptor pattern Dreadnought so different than the current day Dreadnoughts, at least from the visual perspective, is its interesting design of the Dreadnought's head. The oversized metal helm possesses precious cargo of sensory nodes, visual aspects, and pict finders linked to the corpse that is deep within the Dreadnought. The Contemptor was given the simulated head to focus its pilot's awareness forward. It helped to create an impression within the corpse neurological sensory input and output that it was still alive, for it saw the outside world just as it had seen on the battlefield. From a human perspective, albeit from a much taller vantage point than what the wounded Astartes inside was used to, it gave him that concept of self. The standard Contemptor pattern Dreadnought was outfitted with a twin-linked heavy bolter attached to one arm and a massive Dreadnought close combat weapon in the other. It also had a built-in twin-linked bolter, smoke launcher, and searchlights to complete the standard weapon loadout. These standard weapon complements could be replaced with a number of different weapons to suit different tactical needs, including a multi-melta, a set of twin-linked autocannons, a plasma cannon, a power-leeching heavy conversion beam, a chain fist with a built-in twin-linked bolter, or simple heavy flamers, plasma blasters, and graviton guns. Some Contemptors are outfitted with extra armor plating which allows them to have a carapace-mounted Havoc missile launcher, but for the most part, all Contemptors are protected by their advanced adamantic shielding which generates a protective gravitic shield around the walker thanks to their advanced adamantic power generator. It can provide great protection from both range and melee attacks for the walker. However, when it's damaged, the adamantic power generator can overload, and the result is a devastating miniature atomic explosion that destroys everything around the Contemptor. Now, all of these different weapon loadouts ended up creating different sub-patterns of Contemptor Dreadnoughts. There were three main ones, starting with the Contemptor Incendious Dreadnought. Similar in most respects to the widely used Contemptor chassis, the Incendious differed in one key aspect, the external Incendious booster pack secured on its back. This volatile single-burn plasma engine was powerful enough to decelerate the Dreadnought in a fall from low orbit or to propel it in the shallow deeps at significant velocity despite the bulk of its armor and the ceramite endoskeleton. The Blood Angels Legion used this sub-pattern the most as it served exclusively as a shock assault unit, and that's because the half-dead warrior entombed within suffered none of the disorienting effects from the booster pack. As soon as this Dreadnought made planetfall, it just absolutely destroyed the enemies in close combat. Because of this role, they were usually equipped with flamers or the talons of predation, both weapons that were really good for melee. The main goal of this sub-pattern was to secure a heavily contested drop zone for its battle brothers. Those enemies that survived the impact of its arrival were given no opportunity to fortify their position or to fall back in good order just because of the ferociousness and the speed of this Dreadnought. The other really distinct sub-pattern of Contemptor Dreadnought was the Cortus Dreadnought. It was first created during the ancient Olonor Crusade against the Orc Empire of Olonor. They were used to replace the battlefield losses inflicted during the Great Crusade and with limited supply. So this pattern was created from damaged or wrecked examples of the highly successful original Contemptor pattern. It utilized many of the same basic components. However, a large number of the more sophisticated systems and subsystems were replaced with robust if less potent replacements that could be more easily fabricated in the field of battle during the Olonor Crusade. The result was a war machine with its own unique strengths and combat characteristics, but also with a reputation for instability. After the conclusion of the Olonor campaign, the Cordis pattern was phased out almost entirely from the Imperial arsenal, with the surviving examples of the Cordis either decommissioned or put into permanent slumber. It wasn't until the Horus Heresy where these Contemptor Cordis patterns would be resurrected by the interstellar civil war that was occurring. And the last sub-pattern of Contemptor Dreadnought we're going to talk about is the Mortis Dreadnought. It was a highly mobile weapon platform for its battle brothers. They were highly valued for their ability to endure under heavy enemy fire and to operate in locations or theaters of war where traditional combat support vehicles would just be impractical or downright impossible to use. The Contemptor Mortis sub-pattern used a more advanced Contemptor chassis. It was a potent carrier of heavy weapons. It was able to target and destroy the enemy at close range, and was also outfitted with an advanced Helican targeting array, which allowed it to provide Space Marine spearhead forces with close anti-air support when needed. What's awesome about this sub-pattern is that 10 millennia later, the remaining Contemptor Mortis Dreadnoughts are still used as dedicated anti-aircraft support. They are holy relics, but they could destroy aircraft like no other. During the Horus Heresy, and then right afterwards during the Great Scouring, they bore the brunt of the fighting, which meant that a lot of these Contemptor Dreadnoughts suffered the heaviest casualties. And like so many of the Imperium's most advanced and sophisticated war machines of that era, the ability to manufacture and maintain the Contemptor design was essentially lost to the chaotic aftermath of the Heresy. The few Contemptor Dreadnoughts that still exist in the 42nd millennium are incredibly rare pieces of archaeotech, even in comparison to their fellow Dreadnoughts. But when they take to the field, it is a living reminder of the golden age of the Imperium, when the Emperor still walked amongst mankind, and the foes of humanity tremble at the sight of its ancient glory. Now let's move on to another very unique Dreadnought class, the Death Company Dreadnought. Space Marines might be portrayed as godlike beings, but genetic flaws are found in almost every single Space Marine gene seed regardless of their Primarch. While some are subtle, others are so apparent that they dramatically change a battle brother's life forever. The Blood Angels chapter is infamous for their genetic flaws, which have the potential to end a Space Marine's life if allowed to take hold. One of the biggest questions we get is what happens when the genetic flaw strikes a battle brother inside of a Dreadnought? This is a good question because a Space Marine inside of a Dreadnought is basically already on his deathbed. The chassis of the Dreadnought is a sarcophagus, so what does a genetic mutation do to an already dead Space Marine? The answer is that a Space Marine is kept alive by the life support systems of the Dreadnought, and the genetic flaw is allowed to run rampant on whatever is left inside of the sarcophagus. These types of situations are extremely rare, and only a few of the Dreadnoughts that succumb to a genetic flaw are allowed to live. The best example of these types of cursed battle brothers is the Death Company Dreadnought. Death Company Dreadnoughts differ from standard Imperial Dreadnoughts in that their occupants are Astartes that are suffering from the Blood Angels genetic flaw known as the Black Rage. The Black Rage is a genetic flaw that creates mental instability in the Blood Angels, or one of their successor chapters. A battle brother is overcome with the memories and consciousness of Sanguinius. This intrusion mentally teleports the Astarte to the Siege of Terra that had occurred 10,000 Terran years ago. He is lost and unable to distinguish past from reality to the point where his fellow battle brothers might be perceived as the enemy. Some Blood Angels afflicted with the Black Rage may believe they are Sanguinius, fighting in the bloody battles of the Horus Heresy, or they are the Legionnaires, desperately trying to save their Primarch from death. The Black Rage can strike a son of Sanguinius prior to or during a battle. When this happens, the uncontrollable rage of Sanguinius himself charges the battle brothers with constant anger, hatred, and fury. They possess a small portion of the Primarch's unearthly powers, as their strength and vitality boost to levels that seem superhuman even to those of the Space Marines. The condition is largely irreversible, and only a few Blood Angels have managed to overcome the flaw. Rather than let them face a slow, insane death, the Blood Angels and their successors will form a special unit from those that have newly succumbed to the Black Rage. This special force is known as the Death Company. The Dreadnoughts of the Blood Angels and their successors are not immune to the Black Rage, and a Dreadnought pilot that is consumed by the Black Rage can also join the ranks of their chapter's Death Company. A Dreadnought under the influence of the Black Rage is nearly impossible to control or restrain, and as such, he may rage out of control for solar days until the chapter's Tech Marines can rig a device to disable him. It is then up to the chapter's Sanguinary Priest to judge whether or not the Dreadnought's occupant should be sedated until the next battle, or relieved of his life so that another can take its place. If the occupant of the Dreadnought chassis is still sane enough to follow directions after he wakes up, he will be moved to the chapter's Death Company, where his Dreadnought body will be able to withstand tremendous amounts of punishment, and hopefully his unending rage will result in the death of many of the Emperor's foes. Death Company Dreadnoughts are usually armed for close-range combat, where their unstoppable rage and heavily armored sarcophagus render them nearly invulnerable to enemy attack. These Dreadnoughts are deployed by their chapter for assault purposes when enemy positions are deemed too dangerous for any Astarte except those who are under the influence of the Black Rage. As such, Death Company Dreadnoughts are almost always armed with 2 Dreadnought close combat weapons. These types of Dreadnoughts are rarely ever armed with conventional long-range weaponry. It would be pointless, as these Dreadnoughts would only use it until it is close enough to engage the enemy in melee. The chapter has learned to overcome this barrier by arming the Dreadnought with 2 Blood Fist. This is a variant of the Dreadnought Power Fist that is used exclusively by the Blood Angels and their successor chapters. These weapons are outfitted with an underslung Stormbolter on one arm and an underslung Melta gun on the other. The Dreadnought Stormbolter can also be switched out for a Heavy Flamer for greater close combat firepower. Both of the Walker's Blood Fists can be replaced with a pair of Blood Talons. Just like the Blood Fist, the Blood Talons are used exclusively by the Blood Angels and their successors. They're just a variant of the Dreadnought Lightning Claw. The Blood Angels also have another weapon that is exclusive to the Death Company Dreadnoughts, the mighty Magna Grapple. The Magna Grapple is capable of firing several yards of tempered adamantium chain attached to a powerful magnetic and gravitic field generator. When fired at the enemy vehicle, the Magna Grapple's chains form an unyielding bond with the enemy vehicle's hull, allowing the Dreadnought to pull the vehicle in close to finish it off with its main close combat weapons. One of the Death Company's most famous Dreadnoughts was Moriar the Chosen. Moriar was once the captain of the Blood Angels' 4th Company, until he fell on the field of battle of Klamorga, defending a ridge against the Eldar. His mortal wounds proved too numerous and severe for even the skills of a sanguinary priest to heal up. As such, Moriar was placed within the adamantium sarcophagus of a mighty Furioso Dreadnought. It was built by Brother Merleo, which had contained the Blood Angels heroes Balafon, Dario, and Amaretto before him. Upon awakening in this new, indestructible cybernetic body, Moriar was overcome by visions of Sanguinius' death during the Horus Heresy. Moriar's own near-death stage triggered the Curse of the Black Rage, an unusual occurrence in a Blood Angel Dreadnought. Immortal now in the adamantium shell, Moriar managed to survive the ravages of the Black Rage. He was then given the honor of continuing to serve his chapter by being placed within the chapter's infamous Death Company. As the sole Dreadnought to serve within this company of dead men walking, Moriar now fights completely without fear, as befits warriors certain of their own demise and the furious willpower lent to them by the Black Rage. With his Dreadnought body, he has been rendered impervious to wounds that would kill a regular battle brother. Some of the Blood Angels' greatest victories have followed in the wake of the furious assault led by Moriar the Chosen and his Death Company. Yet despite the glories of Moriar's valorous deeds, a price must be paid, for in the fleeting calm of victory, the mighty Dreadnought has sometimes also succumbed to the effects of the Red Thirst. To restrain him when not in battle, his revered battle brothers have modified his armor shell so that he may partake of the blood required to slake the awful curse. Now let's move on to another very unique Dreadnought, the Grey Knight Dreadnought. At this point, we all understand that Dreadnoughts are deadly and powerful Space Marine war engines that act as both combat walkers and life support systems for fallen Astarte warriors. By placing the mortal remains of a fallen Space Marine hero inside one of these cybernetic constructs, the fatally crippled soldier can continue to fight on for the Emperor of Mankind and bring honor to his chapter. And although the functionality of these walkers is cumbersome compared to the demigod-like physiques of the Space Marines, the entombed battle brother becomes even deadlier in almost every aspect of war. However, for those Space Marine chapters that specialize in wielding the etheric powers of the warp, the Dreadnought design must also be altered to facilitate the use of these psychic powers in their death. This means that major alterations must be made to the standard Imperial Castaferum pattern Dreadnought in order to be utilized by the warriors of the Chamber Militant of the Inquisition's Ordo Malleus, the Grey Knights. Unlike other Space Marine chapters, being wired into the chassis of a Dreadnought is not seen as a great honor by the Grey Knights. These battle brothers would much rather spend all eternity buried in the cool shadows of the dead fields beneath the chapter's fortress monastery on Titan. However, these desires come second to the need of the chapter, and so if the Grey Knight finds himself on the brink of death and still clinging to life, it is the duty of the chapter's apothecary to keep him alive long enough to be placed within the metal chassis of a Dreadnought. And every Grey Knight, given this opportunity, has answered the call to serve the Imperium in their death. Their will to continue the fight leads them to consent to the transfer. Once the Battle Brother has become a Grey Knight Dreadnought, he is one of the rarest and most advanced Dreadnought variants in Imperial service. This rarity is due to the Aegis system, a complex network of protective prayers, runes, and other wards which are inscribed into the chassis of the Dreadnought and psychically charged to provide better protection from the sorcerer's powers of demons and other servants of chaos. It literally is a walking tank designed to stomp through the battlefields of a demon world. They are also enhanced to provide their teams with greater psychic defenses. This is possible as a result of the cyber circuitry that is incorporated into the Dreadnought sarcophagus, and which can be linked to its own Aegis field to the psychic defenses deployed by nearby Grey Knight Battle Brothers, thus creating a series of reinforced psychic wards that is much stronger than the individual Grey Knights can project on their own. This defensive ability coupled with the ubiquitous Dreadnought armaments make Grey Knight Dreadnoughts unbelievably deadly on the battlefield. And although becoming a Dreadnought is something most Grey Knight Battle Brothers will avoid, the value that these weapons of war provide for the chapter is unequaled. Each and every walker is a bulldozer of destruction, a fountain of knowledge, and a relic of the long history of the chapter. Every Grey Knight Battle Brother understands that these legendary heroes represent the living embodiment of the chapter's past victories, great deeds, fallen heroes, unquestionable loyalties, and proven honor. In this way, they serve the chapter as a potent symbol of who they are and what they stand for in the service of the Imperium of Man and the Emperor. These Dreadnoughts provide the Grey Knights with a legendary past which many living Battle Brothers strive to emulate. This makes them precious to the chapter and worthy of the utmost respect, as they are venerated for their wealth of past experiences in facing the worst enemies of mankind, as well as the wise counsel that they routinely provide for their brethren. As a matter of fact, each of the Grey Knight's 8 brotherhoods maintains their own Dreadnoughts, and most are past Grey Knight Grandmasters or Captains. Yet some amongst these honored ancients were once just low-ranking Battle Brothers who demonstrated exceptional courage and heroism in battle. And as only the most worthy are placed within the formidable cybernetic shells of a Dreadnought, it is seen as perhaps the greatest honor that the chapter can bestow on a Battle Brother. Like other chapters, the Dreadnoughts of the Grey Knights are only awakened from their long cybernetic slumbers at times when victory cannot be achieved through mortal means alone. It is at these points of crisis that the greatest heroes of the chapter need to be awoken to fight once more in the defense of the Imperium. It is the Master Armorer of the Grey Knights who enters the Chamber of Heroes deep in the bowels of the Fortress Monastery in order to begin the awakening process. Dreadnoughts are only ever awoken in times of dire need, as the chapter's Grandmasters feel the extensive reliance of these ancient warriors is a dishonor to the gifts that they provide. Each and every one of these Dreadnoughts performed an unbelievably remarkable feat or fought a legendary foe in the name of the Emperor of Mankind, just like the ancient Aeneas, who served as the Grand Master for 55 years before being interned after being mortally wounded in combat against the Chaos Sorcerer Ahriman, or the Venerable Orias, who was interned within his Dreadnought in the 39th millennium after dueling with the Demon Prince Herperitus, the Plague Lord of the Death Guard Traitor Legion. Now, since the creation of the Grey Knights chapter, modifications to the standard design has created 4 major variations of Grey Knight Dreadnoughts. The most recognized is the Venerable Dreadnought, which follows the master-crafted and highly ornate design of the standard Venerable Dreadnoughts of other chapters. There is also the Mortis Dreadnought, which was created as a supreme but most importantly stable firing platform equipped with long-range heavy weapons like las cannons, autocannons, and missile launchers. In the same vein as the Mortis, the Hellfire variant was designed for long-range fire support, but specialized in a higher output of fire to destroy huge mobs of demons. And finally we have the Doomglaive, which is the rarest variant that replaces the Dreadnought's standard loadout with a potent anti-psyker heavy side cannon. This weapon is exclusive to the Grey Knights as it fires high-caliber, psychically charged, ritually inscribed silver-tipped bolts called Psy Bolts. This specialized ammunition vaporizes psychic creatures in an instant. And all of these elements showcase how a Grey Knight Dreadnought is one of the chapter's most fearsome warriors. Any opponent unlucky enough to find themselves in front of one of these is going to be completely obliterated. And finally, I want to take a look at the Chaos Dreadnoughts. Just like their loyalist counterparts, a mortally wounded Chaos Space Marine can be saved by placing his body into a cybernetic sarcophagus that contains multiple life support technologies, often at the hands of the Dark Mechanicus. This sarcophagus is then placed within the armored form of a combat walker that the sarcophagus's inhabitant can control using neural impulses. For the loyalists, this is simply a dreadnought, but for the heretical Astartes of a traitor legion, This is known as the Chaos Ferrum Infernus Dreadnought. Many of the same procedures are performed for this pattern of dreadnought, and although it is easy for inexperienced Imperial forces to believe that these massive war machines are hellbrutes, the Ferrum Infernus Dreadnought has not undergone any of the mutational processes that are common amongst the hellbrutes. This fate is often given to those heretical Astartes that have proven to be capable warriors, but have not gained the favor of any of the Chaos Gods. And while entombment into a dreadnought is an honor for a loyalist Astarte, most Chaos Space Marines do not see this fate as an honor at all, but as a destiny to be avoided at all costs. This is because being trapped within the armored shell of a dreadnought, while being enforced with the powers of chaos, drives the Chaos Space Marine insane, and transforms the resulting Ferrus Infernus Dreadnought into an unstoppable and incredibly bloodthirsty killing machine, losing all sanity. As a result, far from being revered for their wisdom and experience like their Imperial counterparts, all Chaos Dreadnoughts are shackled securely when not in combat, because the crippled Chaos Space Marine within them is driven insane by the millennia of being trapped within a cold cybernetic sarcophagus as the powers of chaos warp his mind and spirit. They are used as insane behemoths to trample the enemy and are regarded with caution, as the madman within the dreadnought can turn his wrath upon his comrades if there are no enemies within range. It is exactly this unreliability that led Abaddon the Despoiler to call for the creation of the Defiler as a replacement for the Traitor Legion's dreadnoughts. This is also why most Chaos Dreadnoughts carry within them the maniacal remains of an Astarte warrior that dates back 10,000 Terran years ago. As they are not wise or even reliable by any standards, Chaos Dreadnoughts are usually designated as fire support or frontal close combat assault units, rather than elite warriors. They are also armed with similar weapons as their loyalist counterparts. These include dreadnought close combat weapons, such as claws or energy-infused whips or flails, or twin-linked autocannons, las cannons, and heavy bolters. Chaos Dreadnoughts are also sometimes fitted with multi-meltas and plasma cannons to provide enhanced armor-piercing abilities, but often prove erratic or unstable in combat, and as a result, few Chaos Space Marine warbands will make use of them unless there is little other choice, and will prefer to use other, more reliable demonic engines. That's not to say that there hasn't been any successful and powerful Chaos Dreadnoughts. The following are two examples of Chaos Dreadnoughts that maintain their sanity and terrorize the Imperium of Man. Like so many Chaos Space Marine Dreadnoughts, Malkarion, also known as the War Sage, first made a name for himself during the Great Crusade as captain of the Night Lord's Legion's 10th Company. He would side with his Primarch Conrad Kirsch during the Horus Heresy, where he went on to slay 3 loyalist champions during the Siege of Terra. First, Zuromai Khan, Swordmaster Captain of the White Scar's 9th Company, and then Lethandrus the Templar, Paladin of the Imperial 5th Legion, and finally Raguel the Sufferer, Captain of the Blood Angel 7th Company. He slayed all 3 champions, all in one single day. However, after this feat, the famed commander and wise strategist of the Night Lords was interned within a dreadnought. The dreadnought sarcophagus depicted Malkarion holding 2 Astarte helms, with his foot resting on a third, representing the 3 Astarte champions he killed. The dreadnought's right arm was a Reaper pattern double-barrel autocannon, and the left arm a power fist and a flamer. Malkarion actually never wanted to be revived as a dreadnought, and initially refused every attempt to be awakened until the Battle of Krythe. Like many in the Night Lords, Malkarion has remained fiercely loyal to the original vision of his Primarch, and has a disdain for the ruinous powers, as well as the Chaos Space Marines who serve them, most notably Abaddon the Despoiler. He is also loyal to Talos Valkoran, whom he believes shares many qualities with his slain Primarch. In the late 41st millennium, the dreadnought holding Macarius' remains was awoken by Talos during his power struggle with the Exalted, who attempted to prevent the ancient captain and his hated rival from threatening his power over the elite unit known as the First Claw, as this represented the first time Malkarion had ever been awakened since being placed within the dreadnought chassis. Malkarion went on to lead an assault on Krythe with the Black Legion against the forces of the Imperium, including the Blood Angels. Just as the First Claws were about to be deployed to the surface of the invasion, Talos had another vision, showing that the Blood Angels were not several solar weeks out, as had been predicted, but instead were going to arrive imminently. The Exalted refused to take action with this information, but when Malkarion was informed, he immediately started withdrawing the Night Lords. As Talos predicted, the Blood Angels emerged from the warp and deployed boarding pods onto the Echo of Damnation. Malkarion responded to Talos' request for reinforcements, and once again faced Raguel the Sufferer, now also interned within a dreadnought. Both dreadnoughts were mortally wounded in the struggle, leaving Raguel dead at the hands of the Night Lords once more. Talos chose not to let the Dark Mechanicum tech priest, Deltrian, attempt to recover Malkarion so that the Dreadnought could finally have the eternal sleep he desired. However, Talos was revoked by Malek, who ordered Deltran to repair and sustain the life of Malkarion, and the sarcophagus was returned to the Hall of Remembrancers, but hidden from view to prevent Talos from discovering that Malkarion had survived. Talos would eventually find that Malkarion had survived when Deltran transferred the sarcophagus onto the Echo of Damnation, at which point he ordered Malkarion to be awakened. Initially, it appeared that the damage Malkarion had suffered at the battle weighed too severely. His mind seemed to have been shattered, as attempts to awaken him only resulted in a constant screaming across the Vox link of the Dreadnought chassis. It was believed that Malkarion was ruined beyond recovery, and it was suggested that he could be controlled through pain injectors and focus excruciators, making him still a formidable foe on the battlefield. Talos would not allow this as a fate for a hero of the 8th Legion, and instead intended to end the perceived torture by killing Malkarion. In the end, however, he couldn't go through with it, and instead he chose to destroy the console connected to Malkarion to abort the awakening sequence. Although it appeared that Talos had succeeded in killing Malkarion, instead the Dreadnought finally awakened, correctly and fully functional. Malkarion descended into the catacombs of the Carrion world to aid Talos and his warband in his final stand against the assault of the Eldar Ulthwé Azurani, although he chose to fight alone as the constant praise from the other First Claws irritated him. The Dreadnought took extensive damage from the Eldari, but managed to return to the surface to summon a gunship for the crew. This was his final action before he was at last granted the permanent sleep he had long craved. And then there's Warsmith Berosus. Warsmith Berosus' battle honor stretched back to the Great Crusade, as he fought alongside his Primarch Perturabo and earned the honor of being Warsmith of the 2nd Battalion of the Iron Warriors. During the heresy, he sided with the traitors and fought valiantly against the followers of the Corpse Emperor. At the command of Warmaster Horus, the Iron Warriors were sent to halt an encroaching Imperial Fist fleet that had originally been sent to Isfahan III by Rogel Dorn himself to reinforce the beleaguered loyalists trapped on that world. This battle would be remembered as the Battle of Fao. Check out the link above if you want to learn more about this epic void battle between the two rival legions. Berosus had the misfortune of delivering the bad news of the outcome of the battle to his Primarch, whose volatile mood had steadily worsened since the slaughter of Isfahan V. He had hoped his position as a warsmith would have kept him from harm, but it was to be a fool's hope, for Perturabo's rage didn't discriminate, and he assaulted the warrior. On the orders of his Primarch, Berosus was eventually encased within the shell of a Chaos Dreadnought to be tormented across the centuries. Unlike most Chaos Dreadnoughts, Berosus is sane of mind. He is able to exercise his own command because he has not been driven insane by the internment within a Dreadnought's armor. By the late 41st millennium, on the demon world of Mendragard, Berosus and his fellow warsmith, Taramino, were angered over Warsmith Hanzo's refusal to share the Imperial Fist gene seed that was stolen from the Hydra Cordatus during the 13th Black Crusade, and so declared war against him. The aggressive Berosus had his Grand Company lay siege to Hanzo's citadel, and although the losses proved high, he succeeded in breaching the citadel's walls. Facing Hanzo in close combat, Berosus nearly killed Hanzo with a siege drill. Unfortunately, victory was torn from his grasp when Hanzo's life was saved by the demonic life ward, Onyx, who managed to breach Berosus' Dreadnought carapace. Hanzo then reached inside the Dreadnought shell and ripped out the Mind Impulse unit and tore out Berosus' head before all to see. Berosus' warband then defected to the service of Hanzo shortly thereafter. And those are just some of the patterns that you're probably not going to see on the tabletop anymore. I hope you guys enjoyed this deep dive. If you have any suggestions for other topics, let me know what they are in the comment section below, and we'll talk tomorrow. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.
Always used to put my freedom